The city of Boston hummed with a relentless energy that Olivia Hayes not only navigated, but thrived in. From her corner office on the 34th floor of the Innovatech Solutions Tower, the Charles River snaked below like a silver ribbon, a serene counterpoint to the furious digital pulse of the company she'd helped build. Today, that pulse thrummed with triumph. The Kestrel account, a behemoth in the sustainable energy sector, was theirs. Olivia, as senior marketing executive, had spearheaded the pitch, her meticulously crafted strategy and unyielding confidence winning the day. A tight, satisfied smile touched her lips as she reviewed the congratulatory emails flooding her inbox. This was it. This was the validation, the peak she'd been climbing towards for 2 decades. Her reflection in the darkened window showed a woman in her early 40s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray power suit, her auburn hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. Sharp, intelligent eyes, yes, but also etched with a faint wariness she usually chose to ignore. "You nailed it, Olivia," Mark, her ambitious junior, said, popping his head in. "The partners are ecstatic. Drinks at the Bellwether tonight to celebrate?" Olivia managed a grateful nod. "Thanks, Mark. Maybe a quick one. I should get home." The should felt heavier than the Kestrel portfolio. Home. The spacious, architecturally impressive colonial in Newton, a testament to her success, Michael's talent, and their shared American dream. Lately, though, the dream felt remote, like a beautifully rendered blueprint that hadn't quite translated into a lived-in reality. Michael, her husband, an architect of considerable talent, once brimming with passion for designing community centers and affordable, beautiful housing. Now, his projects were mostly high-end renovations for clients who haggled over marble finishes. He'd grown quieter over the years, his initial pride in her soaring career slowly morphing into something she couldn't quite name, something that resided in the lengthening silences between them. And Lily, their 10-year-old daughter, a bright, sensitive girl who was starting to ask why Mom was always on her laptop, why Dad seemed sad even when he smiled. Lily was the unwavering star in Olivia's often turbulent sky, the reason she pushed so hard. For us, she'd tell herself, "This is all for us." The drive to Newton was an unwinding, a shedding of the corporate warrior skin. Yet, as she turned onto their tree-lined street, the familiar knot tightened in her stomach. The house, with its perfectly manicured lawn and welcoming porch light, automated, of course, felt less like a sanctuary and more like another project demanding her oversight. She found Michael in the kitchen, staring into the open refrigerator as if it held the answers to the universe. He was still handsome at 44, his dark hair now threaded with distinguished silver at the temples, but his shoulders were slumped, his usual thoughtful expression clouded. "Hi," she said, her voice still carrying a residue of boardroom efficiency. "Good day," he started, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes before it was shuttered. "Oh, hi. Didn't hear you come in?" "Yeah, fine. Usual." He closed the refrigerator. "You? Landed Kestrel?" She allowed a small measure of her triumph to surface. "That's great, Liv. Congratulations." His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. He picked up a dish towel, began wiping an already spotless counter. The silence stretched, filled only with the hum of the Sub-Zero. Olivia wanted to bridge it, to share the electric thrill of her day, but the words caught in her throat. It was easier to talk about Kestrel's Q3 projections than the growing distance in her own kitchen. "Lily?" she asked. "Homework. Upstairs." "Right." Olivia unbuttoned her suit jacket. "I was thinking, maybe we could all go out for dinner to celebrate that new Italian place in the village?" It was a rare, spontaneous offer. Michael looked surprised, then a shadow crossed his face. "Oh, tonight? I actually made plans?" "Plans?" Disappointment, sharp and childish, pricked her. "With who?" "Just an old colleague. Catching up." He wouldn't meet her gaze. "We can do dinner tomorrow, if you like." "Right, tomorrow." The word hung there, another postponement, another rain check on their life. Later that evening, after a perfunctory goodnight to Lily, who was already half asleep, Olivia found herself tidying Michael's study. It was a habit, a way to impose order on the subtle chaos that seemed to emanate from him lately. His briefcase lay open on his desk, papers spilling out. She reached for his phone charger, which he often misplaced, and her fingers brushed against a small, square box tucked into a side pocket. Curiosity, an unwelcome guest, nudged her. It was elegantly wrapped in silver paper, tied with a delicate navy ribbon. Not her birthday, not their anniversary. Her heart began a strange, uneven rhythm. With trembling fingers, she lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, lay a silver locket. Intricate, antique-looking, utterly unfamiliar. It was beautiful. But it wasn't for her. Tucked beneath it was a small cream-colored card. Her breath hitched. The handwriting was feminine, flowing. M, for all the shared smiles and whispered dreams, you make the world brighter. C. The air rushed from Olivia's lungs. The room tilted. C. Not her initial. Not a name she knew in their shared circle. Shared smiles. Whispered dreams. The words were like shards of glass, embedding themselves in her heart. She sank into Michael's chair, the locket cold and heavy in her palm. The gleam of the Kestrel account, the accolades, the 34th floor view, all of it dissolved into a sickening gray fog. This was the unspoken thing, the shadow in Michael's eyes, the reason for his absences, his evasions. The chill she'd felt in their home wasn't just from the demanding New England weather. It was the frost of betrayal, slowly, stealthily creeping in, and she, in her relentless pursuit of a different kind of success, had been too blind to see it. The house was silent when Michael returned, well past 11. Olivia sat in the darkened living room, the silver locket and card laid out on the mahogany coffee table like damning evidence in a courtroom. Each tick of the grandfather clock in the hall amplified the frantic thumping of her own heart. He entered, humming softly, a scent of unfamiliar perfume clinging faintly to his jacket, a sweet vanilla-tinged fragrance that was definitely not hers. He stopped short when he saw her. Liv? You're still up. Everything okay? His voice was too casual, laced with an undercurrent of unease. Olivia didn't speak. She simply gestured towards the table. Michael's gaze followed hers. The color drained from his face. He looked from the locket to her, his eyes wide with a dawning horror. The silence in the room became a physical weight, pressing down on them. Olivia, He started, his voice hoarse. Who is C? Her voice was deceptively calm, a thin veneer over a roiling volcano of emotion. He swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. He looked away, then back at her, his face a mask of guilt and despair. It's complicated. Complicated? A harsh laugh escaped her. That's what you call this? This cheap, sordid little gift? These whispered dreams with someone who isn't your wife? The locket felt like it was burning her fingers as she picked it up, holding it out to him. Who is she, Michael? He sank onto the edge of the sofa opposite her, his shoulders hunched. Her name is Chloe Vance. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of profound agitation. We met at an art class. An art class. Olivia felt a wave of nausea. While she was battling in boardrooms, strategizing multi-million-dollar campaigns, he was sketching? Whispering dreams with a woman named Chloe? The banality of it was almost as insulting as the betrayal itself. How long, Michael? The question was a sliver of ice. He hesitated, his gaze fixed on the floor. A few months. Emotionally, longer. It just happened. It just happened? Olivia's control snapped. She shot to her feet, pacing the length of the Persian rug. Things don't just happen, Michael. Choices are made. You chose to do this. You chose to lie to me, to betray our marriage, our family. Her voice rose, raw with pain and fury. While I was working myself to the bone for us, for Lily, you were finding solace with Chloe? Tears welled in Michael's eyes. Liv, please. I know I've destroyed everything. I'm so sorry. You have to believe me. Sorry? The word tasted like ash. Sorry doesn't fix this, Michael. Sorry doesn't erase the image of you with another woman. Sorry doesn't explain how you could look me in the eye day after day and lie. I was lonely, he whispered, the words barely audible. You were always working, always stressed. It felt like I was invisible, like I didn't matter anymore. Chloe, she listened. She saw me. His words, meant perhaps as an explanation, felt like another blow. So this was her fault too? Her ambition, her dedication, they were the culprits? The injustice of it choked her. So you found someone else to make you feel visible? Olivia's voice dripped with sarcasm. Instead of talking to me, instead of telling me how you felt, you chose to sneak around to betray the vows we made? The fight raged for hours, a torrent of accusations, tearful confessions, bitter recriminations. The carefully constructed facade of their perfect suburban life shattered, leaving behind the ugly, jagged reality of their broken marriage. Michael didn't deny the affair, didn't try to minimize it beyond his initial weak attempts at justification. He seemed broken, consumed by a guilt that was almost palpable. But Olivia's pain was too immense, too raw, to allow for any empathy. All she felt was the searing agony of betrayal, the utter desolation of a future she thought was secure, now lying in ruins. As dawn approached, painting the sky in hues of gray and bruised purple, an exhausted, fragile truce settled over them. Nothing was resolved. The chasm between them had only widened, deepened. Olivia retreated to the guest room, the locket still clutched in her hand. Sleep was impossible. Her mind replayed every conversation, every shared glance, every moment of the past few months, searching for signs she'd missed, clues to Michael's deception. Had she been that blind? That absorbed in her own world? The image of Lily, sleeping peacefully in her room, oblivious to the storm raging downstairs, brought a fresh wave of anguish. How could she protect her daughter from this? How could their family ever recover? The next morning, the house felt like a mausoleum. Lily, perceptive as ever, sensed the oppressive atmosphere immediately. "Is Daddy mad at you, Mommy?" she asked, her small face puckered with worry. Olivia forced a smile. "No, sweetie. Daddy and I just had a grown-up disagreement. We're just tired." The lie felt heavy on her tongue. Michael emerged, pale and drawn, his eyes red-rimmed. He tried to engage Lily in conversation, but his efforts were strained, artificial. The tension was a thick, suffocating blanket. Over the next few days, Olivia moved through her life in a daze. She went to work, sat in meetings, made decisions, but it was all on autopilot. Her real focus was internal, a maelstrom of grief, anger, and a terrifying uncertainty. She confided in her sister, Jess, whose outrage on Olivia's behalf was a fierce, comforting balm. Then she called Dr. Emily Carter, her college roommate, now a respected psychologist in San Francisco. Emily listened patiently, her calm, measured voice a lifeline across the miles. "Olivia, this is devastating," Emily said, her empathy palpable even through the phone. "Allow yourself to feel whatever you're feeling, the anger, the pain, the confusion. Don't rush into any decisions." "I don't know what to do, Em," Olivia whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I look at him, and all I see is a stranger, a liar." "That's understandable," Emily said gently. "But he's also Michael, the man you've loved, the father of your child. This is incredibly complex. Take it one day at a time." One day at a time felt like an eternity. The house became a cold war zone. Silent meals, averted gazes, whispered conversations that ceased abruptly when Lily entered the room. Olivia started sleeping permanently in the guest room. She consulted a divorce lawyer, the sterile, pragmatic advice a stark contrast to the emotional chaos consuming her. Michael, for his part, seemed to shrink into himself. He made halting attempts at apology, at explanation, but Olivia couldn't hear them. The wall of her pain was too high, too thick. He looked ill, shadows under his eyes, a persistent fatigue that he dismissed as stress. Olivia, lost in her own agony, barely registered it. The fracture in their marriage was all-consuming, a gaping wound that showed no signs of healing. The future, once a bright, meticulously planned landscape, was now a terrifying, uncharted wilderness. The late summer heat clung to Boston, a humid, oppressive blanket that mirrored the atmosphere in the Hayes household. Weeks had passed since the discovery, each day a torturous repetition of unspoken accusations and palpable grief. Olivia was functioning, but barely. Innovatech saw a more subdued, almost brittle version of their star executive. Lily, caught in the crossfire of her parents' silent war, had become withdrawn, her usual bright chatter replaced by anxious questions and watchful eyes. Michael was a ghost in his own home. He'd lost weight, his skin had taken on a grayish pallor, and a persistent, dry cough had developed. Olivia, when she noticed, attributed it to the stress he was undoubtedly under, a grim sort of poetic justice. Her empathy reserves were depleted, cauterized by betrayal. One Saturday morning, Olivia was attempting to work on a presentation in the sunroom, the Kestrel account now feeling like a distant, irrelevant memory. Lily was listlessly pushing cereal around her bowl at the kitchen island. Michael had been quiet all morning, holed up in his study. Suddenly, a dull thud echoed from the hallway, followed by a gasp from Lily. "Daddy!" Olivia's head snapped up. She raced into the hall to find Michael slumped against the wall, his face ashen, one hand clutching his chest. He was gasping for breath, his eyes wide with a mixture of pain and terror. "Michael!" Olivia's anger, her resentment, evaporated in a rush of pure, primal fear. She dropped to her knees beside him. "What's wrong? Michael, talk to me!" "Chest! Pain," he wheezed, his words fragmented. "Can't breathe." Lily stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy, what's happening to Daddy?" Olivia's mind, trained for crisis in the boardroom, kicked into emergency mode. "Lily, sweetie, call 911. Now! Tell them your daddy is having trouble breathing and has chest pain." As Lily, surprisingly composed despite her tears, made the call, Olivia turned back to Michael. His skin was clammy, his lips tinged with blue. She remembered the CPR course Innovatech had mandated years ago. Her hands, usually so steady signing contracts, trembled as she checked his pulse. It was faint, thready. "Michael, stay with me," she urged, her voice shaking. She tilted his head back, began chest compressions, the rhythm a desperate prayer. The minutes stretched into an agonizing eternity, filled with Lily's frightened sobs and Olivia's own ragged breaths. The wail of sirens growing closer was the most welcome sound she had ever heard. Paramedics burst through the door, their calm professionalism a stark contrast to the chaos within. They worked quickly, assessing Michael, administering oxygen, hooking him up to monitors. "Possible MI," one of them muttered, his voice grim. "Myocardial infarction. Heart attack." The words hit Olivia like a physical blow. As they loaded Michael onto the gurney, his eyes found hers, filled with a silent, desperate plea. In that moment, he wasn't the man who had betrayed her. He was just Michael, her husband, fighting for his life. The ride to Massachusetts General Hospital was a blur. Olivia sat in the front of the ambulance, Lily clutching her hand, her small body trembling. The sterile environment of the emergency room, the hushed, urgent voices of the medical staff, the incessant beeping of machines, it all felt surreal, a nightmare from which she couldn't awaken. Jess arrived within the hour, her face etched with concern. She whisked a traumatized Lily away to the cafeteria, leaving Olivia alone with her thoughts in the stark waiting room. The anger she had nurtured for weeks felt distant, almost trivial, overshadowed by a gnawing fear. Hours later, a tired-looking cardiologist, Dr. Chen, approached her. "Mrs. Hayes?" Olivia stood, her legs unsteady. "Yes? How is he?" Dr. Chen's expression was serious. "Mr. Hayes has suffered a significant heart attack. We were able to stabilize him, and he's undergone an emergency angioplasty to open a blocked artery. He's currently in the ICU, heavily sedated but stable." Relief, immense and overwhelming, washed over Olivia, quickly followed by a fresh wave of anxiety. Will he be okay? Dr. Chen chose his words carefully. "He's not out of the woods yet. The damage to his heart is considerable. We've also diagnosed him with severe coronary artery disease. This wasn't just a one-off event, Mrs. Hayes. It's a chronic condition that will require significant lifestyle changes and ongoing medical management." He paused, his gaze compassionate but direct. "The next few days are critical, and his recovery, long-term, will depend heavily on a stress-free environment and dedicated care." Stress-free environment, dedicated care. The words echoed in Olivia's mind. She thought of their home, a battleground of unspoken resentments. She thought of her demanding career, the constant pressure, the endless meetings. Dr. Chen continued, "He'll need to be monitored closely when he's discharged. There's a risk of complications. He can't be left alone for extended periods, especially in the initial recovery phase." Olivia felt the walls closing in. The weight of the doctor's words, combined with weeks of emotional turmoil and lack of sleep, was crushing. She looked at her hands, the hands that had just hours ago fought to keep Michael alive. What was she supposed to do? Over the next few days, Michael remained in the ICU, slowly regaining consciousness. He was weak, disoriented, and terrified. Olivia visited daily, sitting by his bedside in a strained silence, the unspoken words of their broken marriage hanging heavy in the sterile air. Lily came too, her small hand clutching Michael's, her presence a fragile bridge between them. During one visit, Michael, his voice raspy, whispered, "Liv, I'm sorry for everything." Olivia just nodded, unable to find words. The betrayal was still there, a raw wound, but now it was overlaid with a complex tapestry of fear, a strange sense of responsibility, and a flicker of the old affection she thought had died. Emily called every evening. "How are you holding up?" she'd ask, her voice a steady anchor. "I don't know, Em." Olivia confessed one night, pacing the confines of the hospital waiting room. "Dr. Chen says he needs constant care, a stress-free environment. How can I provide that? Our home is anything but stress-free. And my job, I can't just walk away from Innovatech." "Can't you?" Emily asked gently. The question hung in the air. Could she? Her career was her identity, her security. But then she thought of Lily's terrified face, of Michael's vulnerability, of Dr. Chen's grave warnings. The decision gnawed at her for days. She went through the motions at work, her mind 1,000 miles away in Michael's hospital room. She saw the concern in her colleague's eyes, the pity. She was the strong one, the unflappable Olivia Hayes. Now she was unraveling. One evening, after a particularly difficult visit where Michael had seemed weaker, more despondent, Olivia sat alone in their quiet, empty house. The silence was deafening. She looked around at the beautiful, impersonal rooms, filled with expensive furniture and art, symbols of a success that now felt hollow. She thought of her childhood, the constant struggle for money, the fear of eviction that had fueled her relentless drive. She had built this fortress of success to protect herself, to protect her family. But the fortress was crumbling from within. With a sudden, stark clarity, she knew what she had to do. It was a terrifying prospect, a leap into the unknown, a surrender of everything she had worked for. But the alternative, watching Michael deteriorate, watching her family disintegrate completely, was unthinkable. The next morning, Olivia Hayes walked into her boss's office at Innovatech Solutions and tendered her resignation. The door of their Newton home closed behind Michael with a soft click, a sound that seemed to seal them into a new, uncertain world. He was pale, leaning heavily on a cane, his steps shuffling and hesitant. The vibrant, energetic man Olivia had married was gone, replaced by this fragile, diminished figure. Lily hovered anxiously, her small hand ready to offer support. Olivia, having navigated the labyrinth of hospital discharge procedures, felt a profound weariness settle into her bones. Resigning from Innovatech had been like severing a limb. The calls from concerned colleagues, the slightly bewildered look on her boss's face, the polite offers to keep her in mind for future opportunities. It all felt like a distant dream. Her reality was now this: a sick husband, a frightened child, and a future that was a terrifying blank canvas. The house, once her pride, now felt like a well-appointed prison. The spacious rooms, designed for entertaining and showcasing success, were ill-suited for convalescence. Olivia quickly transformed the downstairs den into a makeshift bedroom for Michael, moving in a hospital bed rented from a medical supply company. The scent of antiseptic and medication began to permeate the air, overlaying the faint, lingering aroma of Chloe's vanilla perfume that Olivia still sometimes imagined she could smell on Michael's old jackets. Days blurred into a monotonous routine dictated by pill schedules, temperature checks, doctor's appointments, and the careful monitoring of Michael's blood pressure. Olivia, the high-powered executive, was now a full-time caregiver, a role for which she felt utterly unprepared. She learned to administer injections, to change dressings, to recognize the subtle signs of distress. She, who once managed multi-million-dollar budgets, now managed dosages and fluid intake. Exhaustion became her constant companion. Sleep was fragmented, punctuated by Michael's restless nights, his soft groans of pain, or her own anxious thoughts. There were moments when resentment, sharp and bitter, would surface. Why me? Why do I have to be the one to sacrifice everything? He brought this on himself, on us. The words would churn in her mind, a toxic brew of anger and self-pity. Michael was mostly silent, withdrawn into a world of pain and shame. He was acutely aware of Olivia's sacrifice, of the burden he had become. The guilt was a heavy shroud, stifling any attempts at real conversation. He'd murmur, "Thank you," when she adjusted his pillows or brought him his meals, his eyes filled with a weary sadness that Olivia found herself unable to meet. Lily was their fragile, unwitting bridge. She'd sit by Michael's bed, reading him stories from her favorite books, her innocent chatter a small beacon of normalcy in the oppressive atmosphere. She'd draw him pictures, bright, cheerful suns and stick figures holding hands, and tape them to the wall, a child's valiant attempt to inject color into their gray world. One afternoon, about 3 weeks into Michael's home recovery, Olivia was changing the dressing on his surgical incision. Her touch was professional, detached. "Does it hurt?" she asked, her voice flat. Michael flinched slightly. "A bit. Liv, He hesitated, then the words tumbled out, raw and broken. "I lie here, and all I can think about is what I've done. To you. To Lily. The affair, it was a terrible, stupid mistake, born out of my own weakness, my own loneliness. It doesn't excuse it. Nothing excuses it." Olivia continued her task, her face unreadable. "We've been over this, Michael." "No, not like this." His voice was raspy, urgent. "I need you to understand. Chloe, she was an escape, a fantasy. It meant nothing compared to what we had, what I threw away." Tears welled in his eyes, tracing paths down his pale cheeks. "I was a fool, a selfish, blind fool. And now you're paying the price. You've given up everything for me." Olivia finished securing the dressing, her movements precise. She finally looked at him, really looked at him, not as the betrayer, not as the patient, but as the man whose life was now so irrevocably intertwined with hers. She saw his fear, his remorse, his profound brokenness. Something shifted within her, a tiny, almost imperceptible crack in the wall of her anger. "You're right," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "You were a fool. And yes, I'm paying a price. We all are." She paused, then added, her voice softening almost involuntarily, "But you're also Lily's father, and you're still my husband." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken history and an uncertain future. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something. A flicker of acknowledgement, perhaps, that they were in this together, this crucible of suffering and care. As autumn deepened, painting the New England landscape in fiery hues of red and gold, Michael's physical recovery was slow, fraught with setbacks. There were days he was stronger, able to sit in a chair by the window, watching the leaves fall. Other days he was racked with pain or overwhelming fatigue, retreating into a despondent silence. Olivia found an unexpected rhythm in the caregiving. Away from the relentless pressure of her corporate life, a different part of her began to emerge. She rediscovered small domestic comforts. The aroma of soup simmering on the stove, the quiet satisfaction of a well-ordered sick room, the surprisingly soothing repetition of laundry and cleaning. She started sketching again, an old passion from her college days, filling notebooks with drawings of the changing leaves, Lily's expressive face, even Michael's sleeping form. The long hours they spent together, stripped of all pretenses, forced a new kind of intimacy. The conversations were no longer about blame or recrimination. Instead, they were filled with a raw, painful honesty. Michael talked about his unfulfilled dreams, his sense of being overshadowed by Olivia's success, the gnawing loneliness that had made him vulnerable. He didn't offer these as excuses, but as confessions, laying bare his own frailties. Olivia, in turn, began to voice her own long-suppressed feelings, her fear of failure that drove her workaholism, her own loneliness within their increasingly distant marriage, the deep hurt of feeling unseen and unappreciated, not just by him, but perhaps by herself as well. "I thought," she said one crisp October evening as they sat in the dimly lit den, Michael propped up in bed, Olivia in a nearby armchair, "that if I achieved enough, if I provided enough, we'd be happy, secure. I was so focused on building the future, I missed the present." Michael reached out a tentative hand, his fingers brushing hers. "We both did, Liv. We both got lost." His touch was hesitant, almost questioning. Olivia didn't pull away. A fragile warmth spread through her. It wasn't the passionate spark of their youth, but something quieter, deeper. A connection forged in shared pain and a dawning understanding. Lily, ever observant, noticed the subtle shifts. The sharp edges in her mother's voice softened. Her father's smiles, though still weak, seemed more genuine. The oppressive tension in the house began to ease, replaced by a quiet, almost melancholy peace. One afternoon, Michael, looking through an old photo album Lily had brought him, paused at a picture of them from their honeymoon in Italy, young and carefree, beaming at the camera. "Remember that trattoria in Florence?" he murmured, a wistful smile playing on his lips. "The one with the terrible singer but the amazing pasta?" Olivia smiled, a genuine, unforced smile. "And the cheap red wine that gave us both a headache the next day." They laughed, a soft, shared sound that felt like a balm to their wounded souls. It was a small moment, a fleeting glimpse of the past, but it held a spark of hope for the future. The issue of Chloe Vance surfaced again, not as an accusation, but as a necessary clearing of the air. Michael, stronger now, confessed he had ended all contact with Chloe the day after Olivia's discovery, long before his heart attack, consumed by a shame so profound he could barely speak of it. He had written her a letter, he said, explaining his terrible mistake and his unwavering, if belated, commitment to his marriage. Olivia listened, the pain a familiar ache, but this time it was mingled with a sense of closure. Chloe was a ghost, a symptom of their brokenness, not the cause. The real work lay within themselves, within the ruins of their marriage. The crucible of caregiving was slowly, painfully transforming them. Stripped bare of their old identities, their old defenses, Olivia and Michael were beginning to see each other, and themselves, with new eyes. The path ahead was still uncertain, fraught with challenges, but for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel entirely hopeless. Winter arrived in New England with a quiet intensity, blanketing Newton in a pristine layer of snow. The world outside their windows seemed hushed, reflective, a stark contrast to the turbulent emotions that had characterized the preceding months. Inside the Hayes home, a similar, though far more fragile, quietude had begun to settle. Michael's physical recovery continued its slow, upward trajectory. He was walking more steadily now, his color had improved, and the haunted look in his eyes was gradually being replaced by a quiet determination. Dr. Chen was cautiously optimistic, emphasizing that the journey was a marathon, not a sprint, but acknowledging the significant progress Michael had made. The dedicated care, the stress-reduced environment, Olivia's immense sacrifice was paying dividends. With Michael's improved health came a subtle shift in their dynamic. He was less dependent, more engaged. The long hours of forced proximity, once a source of tension, now provided opportunities for a different kind of connection. They fell into a rhythm of shared quietude. Reading side by side in the den, Michael now able to sit in his comfortable armchair for longer periods. Olivia would often read aloud, novels, poetry, articles from the New Yorker, her voice a soothing presence in the room. One afternoon, as Olivia was sketching the snow-laden branches outside the window, Michael watched her, a soft smile on his face. "You're good at that," he said quietly. "You always were. I remember those drawings you used to do in college of the campus architecture." Olivia paused, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. I'd forgotten about those. She hadn't sketched seriously in years, her creative energies entirely consumed by marketing campaigns and PowerPoint presentations. Now, with the unexpected gift of time, this old passion had resurfaced, offering a quiet solace. "Maybe," Michael suggested tentatively, "when I'm a bit stronger, we could, I don't know, take a class together? Like that pottery one I took? Or something else, just for fun." The mention of the art class where he'd met Chloe sent a small familiar pang through Olivia, but she recognized the intent behind his words, a hesitant offering, an attempt to rebuild, to create new shared memories. "Maybe," she echoed, her voice gentle. "Let's see how you're feeling." Trust, Olivia realized, wasn't a switch to be flipped. It was a delicate seedling, needing careful nurturing, consistent sunlight, and protection from harsh winds. Michael's consistent efforts, his genuine remorse, his newfound attentiveness to her and Lily, these were the slow, steady watering. He made a point of asking about her day, not just the caregiving tasks, but her thoughts, her feelings. He listened, truly listened, in a way he hadn't in years. He remembered small things, her preference for Earl Grey tea, her aversion to a certain news channel, the way she liked her toast. These were tiny gestures, but they spoke volumes. Lily, sensing the thaw, blossomed. Her anxiety eased, replaced by a quiet joy in having both her parents present, truly present, for the first time she could remember. She involved Michael in her school projects, read him chapters from her books, and even persuaded him to help her design a new layout for her dollhouse. A task he undertook with a surprising, gentle enthusiasm, his architect's skills finding a new, miniature outlet. One snowy Saturday, Jess came to visit, bringing her two boisterous young sons. The house, usually so quiet, filled with the cheerful chaos of children's laughter. Olivia watched Michael interact with his nephews, a faint smile playing on his lips as he patiently answered their endless questions. Jess caught Olivia's eye, a questioning, hopeful look in her own. Later, as they washed dishes together in the kitchen, Jess said softly, "He seems different, Liv. Better." "He is," Olivia admitted. "We both are, I think." "Are you happy?" Jess asked, her voice tentative. Olivia paused, considering the question. Happy wasn't quite the word. The pain of the betrayal was still there, a dull ache beneath the surface, a scar that would likely never fully fade. But there was a sense of peace, of quiet contentment that she hadn't experienced in years. "I'm finding my way," Olivia said. "It's not the life I planned, but maybe it's the life I needed." As winter began its slow retreat, yielding to the first tentative signs of spring, Olivia found herself at a crossroads. Michael was largely self-sufficient now, though he still required careful management of his condition. The question of her future, her career, loomed large. Innovatech had, true to their word, reached out with a potential consulting project. The lure of her old life, the familiar thrill of the corporate world, was still there. She discussed it with Michael one evening as they sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the crisp early spring air. The first crocuses were pushing through the thawing earth in the garden. "It's a good opportunity," Michael said, his voice carefully neutral. "You were brilliant at what you did." Olivia looked out at the twilight settling over their quiet street. "I was," she agreed, "but I'm not sure that's who I am anymore, Michael, or who I want to be." The months of caregiving, of forced introspection had changed her. The relentless drive for external validation had lessened, replaced by a yearning for something more authentic, more meaningful. She had rediscovered parts of herself she'd long neglected. Her creativity, her capacity for quiet connection, her need for a life that wasn't constantly lived at breakneck speed. "I've been thinking," she said slowly, "about starting something small. My own consultancy, maybe. Working from home, on my own terms. Helping small businesses with their marketing. It wouldn't be the Kestrel account, but it would be yours, Michael finished for her, a note of understanding in his voice. And you'd be here. We'd be here. Together. He reached for her hand, his grip firm, reassuring. Whatever you decide, Liv, I support you. We'll make it work. Emily, during one of their video calls, listened thoughtfully as Olivia outlined her tentative plans. It sounds like you've found a new definition of success, Olivia, she said, smiling. One that's less about climbing the ladder and more about building a life that aligns with your values. The slow mend was not just about Michael's heart, or even their marriage. It was about Olivia mending parts of herself she hadn't realized were broken. It was about them, as a couple, painstakingly piecing together a new life from the wreckage of the old. A life built not on grand ambitions or material trappings, but on a foundation of hard-won honesty, shared vulnerability, and a quiet, resilient love. The scars remained, a testament to the storms they had weathered, but the wounds were slowly, surely, beginning to heal. A year had passed since Michael's collapse, since Olivia had walked away from her glittering career at Innovatech. The seasons had turned full circle, and spring had once again returned to Newton, this time with a gentler, more hopeful touch. The Hayes household was a different place. The oppressive tension was gone, replaced by a comfortable, lived-in warmth. Laughter, genuine and frequent, now echoed through the rooms where silence and sorrow had once reigned. Michael, thinner and grayer but with a new light in his eyes, was thriving. He meticulously managed his heart condition with diet, exercise, gentle walks around the neighborhood, often with Olivia or Lily, and medication. He'd even started doing some pro bono architectural design work for a local community garden project. His old passion reignited on a smaller, more personal scale. He no longer chased the grand commissions. He found fulfillment in creating spaces that nurtured and connected people. Olivia had indeed launched her own small marketing consultancy, Fernway Strategies, named after the quiet street where they lived. She worked from a sunlit office carved out of a spare bedroom, advising local artisans, independent bookstore owners, and small tech startups. Her clients valued her sharp strategic mind, but also her empathetic approach. She set her own hours, ensuring she was there for Lily after school, for quiet dinners with Michael, for the unhurried pace of their new life. She earned less, far less, than she had at Innovatech, but she felt richer, more fulfilled than ever before. Her sketches now filled several notebooks, and she'd even taken a weekend watercolor class, tentatively exploring a new creative path. Their marriage was not a fairy tale, perfectly restored. The scar of Michael's infidelity remained, a permanent part of their shared history. There were still moments, triggered by a song, a careless word, a fleeting memory, when the old pain would surface for Olivia. But they had learned to navigate these moments with honesty and compassion. Michael never shied away from her pain, never stopped acknowledging his profound regret and his commitment to earning back her trust day by day. They communicated now, truly communicated. They talked about their fears, their dreams, now recalibrated and more aligned, their daily frustrations, and their small joys. They had learned the art of listening, of being present for each other. Their intimacy was different too, quieter, deeper, rooted in a profound understanding of each other's vulnerabilities and strengths. A shared glance across the dinner table, a hand squeezed during a walk, a comfortable silence as they read together in the evenings. These small gestures held a universe of meaning. Lily, now a confident 11-year-old, was the clearest reflection of their healing. She was happy, secure, her earlier anxieties replaced by a bright, open curiosity about the world. She had her parents back, not as the stressed, distant figures of her early childhood, but as a team, a loving, imperfect unit. One warm Saturday morning in May, Olivia was in the garden, tending to a new patch of lavender she'd planted. Michael came out with 2 mugs of coffee, handing one to her. Lily was nearby, meticulously drawing the intricate patterns on a butterfly wing she'd found. The community garden committee loved the new shelter design, Michael said, a quiet pride in his voice. They're breaking ground next month. That's wonderful, Michael, Olivia said, smiling. She touched his arm, her fingers brushing against the worn cotton of his shirt. You're making a real difference. He looked at her, his gaze filled with an affection that still made her heart skip a beat, albeit in a softer, more gentle way than before. We both are, Liv, in our own ways. They stood there for a moment, sipping their coffee, the scent of damp earth and burgeoning lavender filling the air. The sun warmed their faces. Mrs. Henderson, their elderly neighbor, waved from her own garden, her smile a familiar, comforting presence. Later that day, they were packing a picnic basket for an afternoon at Walden Pond, a family ritual they'd recently adopted. Olivia found an old photo tucked into a recipe book, a picture of her and Michael from years ago at an Innovatech Awards dinner. She was beaming, holding a crystal trophy, Michael standing slightly behind her, a polite but distant smile on his face. She looked at the woman in the photo, the driven executive in the designer dress, and felt a sense of detachment, as if looking at a stranger. Michael came up behind her, glancing at the photo. "A lifetime ago, huh?" Olivia nodded. "A different lifetime." She slipped the photo back into the book. It was part of her story, part of their story, but it wasn't the whole story. It wasn't the ending. As they walked through the woods towards the pond, Lily skipping ahead, Michael reached for Olivia's hand. His touch was warm, familiar, reassuring. "You know," he said, his voice thoughtful, "I used to think happiness was about achieving things, big things. Now I think it's this." He squeezed her hand. "Just this, being here, with you, with Lily, knowing we faced the worst and we found our way back to something better." Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder. The path ahead wasn't guaranteed to be smooth. Life, she now knew, was inherently unpredictable, capable of delivering both devastating blows and unexpected grace. But they faced it together, armed with the hard-won wisdom of their shared experience. They had learned that true strength wasn't about avoiding pain, but about how you navigated it. That true success wasn't measured in accolades or bank balances, but in the depth of your connections, the authenticity of your choices, and the courage to forgive, both yourself and others. The sun dappled through the leaves, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow on the path. A gentle breeze rustled the trees, carrying the promise of a warm, sunlit afternoon. It was, Olivia thought, a different dawn, a new beginning, quieter and more profound than any she could have imagined. And it was, in its own imperfect, resilient way, beautiful.